Welcome to my conversation with Varun Baker. Varun is the CEO of Farm Credibly, a Jamaican company that uses blockchain technology to enable funding for local underbanked farmers. In this conversation, we talk about both sides of the equation. We talk about how the farmers can get funding and how investors can benefit from this alternative investment. Here's my conversation with Varun Baker.
So for me personally, I started getting interested in now what we're calling agri-tech, over 10 years ago, when I started working with the Ministry of Agriculture here in Jamaica. At the time, I was co-founder of a nonprofit called the Slash Roots Foundation. And we had a great opportunity to work with the Ministry of Agriculture that collects a lot of data in Jamaica. And the idea at that point was to create better access to this data and, kind of publish it as a way to actually be a tool for entrepreneurs to build stuff. So I started getting interested actually several years ago, but really Farm Credibly started in 2018 officially. At the end of 2017, I put a team together and we actually won a hackathon. So we're one of, few projects that have sustained themselves beyond, these kind of competitions. But it was a great opportunity. Really, it was organized by NCB, a big commercial bank in Jamaica, and IBM, and a telecoms here called Flow. They were the big sponsors, and they were actually introducing blockchain technology because IBM had this big push to get people on their cloud and using this. So, I'm a software engineer by training, and so, I gravitated very quickly to understanding the technical aspects of this technology. But because of my exposure in agriculture, I realized that, hey, it's actually a really good fit because this technology has the ability to build trust. And agricultural markets here in Jamaica operate with very low levels of trust. So when you look at the interactions between farmers, people who purchase from them, supermarkets, hotels, there's so many layers, but underneath it all is this crazy ecosystem where essentially, nobody trusts anyone, right? The farmer doesn't trust that they're going to get paid on time. Right. The person purchasing from the farmer has questions about consistency and quality. If there's spoilage, they may end up paying for it. So it goes beyond just adding a layer of transparency to our supply chains and actually opens up new possibilities. And that's what really excited me. So the technology allows for the verification or validation of information by third parties for the first time in a credible way. And for agriculture, I was always talking to farmers, trying to get them to, hey, use an app, try to do this for data collection. Data collection and record keeping, bookkeeping is a big challenge for a lot of farmers. And then I realized with this technology, actually, you can remove that burden from being entirely on the farmer and actually validate the farmer's creditworthiness by using third parties or companies within the farmer's business network. So, the farm store that they purchase inputs from, seeds, fertilizer, can, probably does better bookkeeping than the farmer themselves and can kind of vouch for this farmer to say, hey, yes, this person has had this relationship with me for the last 6 months or 6 years. Right. But even more importantly, the person who the farmer is making sales to, right? So an agro processor here or a supermarket can do a similar thing to say, yes, these sales were made based on this farmer's supply, or I bought from this farmer several times. So essentially, it gives the possibility of creating a profile to people who have no credit history, right? And that's the vast majority of Jamaicans, actually. Something like 86% of Jamaicans are underbanked. So not unbanked, but underbanked, meaning they don't, if they're using financial services, it's just to make a deposit and a withdrawal. So they don't go beyond that. And there is a whole suite of financial services that essentially the majority of the population are excluded from. And I realized the power of data in solving this, and that's kind of what started us down this journey of Farm Credibly.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that what you're describing right now is kind of a credit scoring system to build that credibility for business partners, basically, or to evaluate the credit worthiness or business worthiness of the counterparty or the farmer in that case. And how, or I get that so far, but first of all, my question would be, how is the adoption of that? Because I'm assuming you need a kind of network effect or a critical mass of people to participating.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, initially we were like, okay, this is great. You know, we can just offer this as a service to like banks who are already giving loans. So we call this alternative credit scoring. And our main value proposition is that, hey, we can create this score or this measure of credit worthiness where that wasn't possible before. But you're right, you do need a network effect. You do need a large number of people to be participating for this to be useful in the first place. So we have really, pivoted, we've scaled back our expectations, and we've really actually altered the service that we're offering. So like you said, from visiting our website, individuals can actually finance farms, whereas it's not, so this is no longer a tool for banks, at least not now. It's more of a long-term plan to say, hey, we have something that can operate like a credit bureau. Much shorter term, we've scaled back on a lot of the expectations in terms of providing alternative credit scoring, and we've learned a lot in the process, and we've our models continue to evolve. In fact, I wanted to reach out to you because I noticed your background is with the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, I believe.
Right, exactly.
And this school actually published something that was very foundational to Farm Credibly. So there is an agricultural lending evaluation system called ALICE, or the acronym is ALICE, ALES, and it uses, it basically lays the foundation of how to evaluate farmers in terms of credit. And I would love to follow up with you to see if there is anyone you can put me in touch with who has been using this system, because it's also great.
Yeah.
Great, yeah, because it's also helped us.
So guide me a little bit through the process or the pitch, or however you want to call it. So let's assume I'm a Jamaican farmer. I have my plot of land. I'm growing hot pepper, banana, sugarcane, whatever it might be. Why should I work with you? Why should I become a client, or what would be the process or the steps and the benefits for me as a farmer?
So for farmers, it's actually a much easier pitch, and we have a lot of support from farmers who are interested in our product. So for farmers, it's about access to finance. It's a huge perennial problem in the developing world, and I'm learning even in several developed countries where farmers can't access capital. So it's a very easy conversation usually. Hey, do you need capital to expand your farm? The answer is usually yes, right? The challenge is deciding on who is who, right? So there's the idea of, for instance, a subsistence farmer who is only planting to maybe feed themselves. And there is another type of farmer who is perhaps approaching this more like a business and who wants to grow and scale their current operation. And so the challenge is determining who is who. So for farmers, it's a super easy pitch. Hey, do you need access to finance? The answer is usually yes, right? 9 out of 10 farmers or more cannot walk into a bank and get a loan. And if you talk to farmers and see the reality on the ground, there are usually a lot of challenges that can be overcome with access to capital. Like, hey, do you need a water tank? Yeah, most farms in Jamaica, for instance, are rain fed. So it depends on the rainfall. And with climate change, everything else, this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, right? There are droughts, there are big storms, there's a lot to contend with. So for farmers, it's actually a super easy pitch. Hey, do you know, how's your access to finance? You know, yeah.
So then, what would be the first step? I'm assuming I'm registering or signing up at some kind of app or process, and then.
So for a farmer, it's actually a matter of getting a recommendation or being referred to us by someone. So someone who the farmer already does business with will basically vouch for that farmer, say, hey, yes, I know this person. So we, like we were saying earlier, are starting out very focused and very, you know, growing the network from a very small point or an initial stage. So we're focusing on one vertical, which is actually pepper farmers. Hot pepper is a good here that is in very high demand internationally, and there's a lot of potential to grow. We've never satisfied the demand for it internationally.
And there's several bonnet for the win.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Scotch bonnet. Yep. And there's another variety called West Indian Red, which is similar. But these two things, you know, they grow well in our soil. We have a nice flavor profile, and yeah, it's so usually the conversation starts understanding where they fit in the pepper ecosystem. You know, who they sell to, for instance, is an important first step to establish. And from that point, we start building a profile around them. Conversations usually start around what their water source is. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, do you have a water tank? If not, that's probably where some of the initial funding will go.
So to minimize the risk from droughts and stuff, is that the reason?
Yeah, it's all about minimizing risk. Our entire involvement is around minimizing risk in the situation. So we have a very good idea of, you know, what kind of generic budget around pepper production should be. There are several steps to take in addition to the water to help de-risk as well. And yeah, I think usually farmers are onboarded in this way, where we start filling out a profile for them by interacting with them. If things proceed, we eventually do a site visit and actually visit the farm, ensure that they have things in place that they need, see if there are any risks that they may not have thought of or communicated, and yeah, that's kind of how the onboarding of farmers goes.
Okay, and then so let's say I got green light that I'm trustworthy, business worthy, that I fulfill all the requirements. Do I then kind of just state the amount of money that I'm applying for, or how would the next? Do I have to say, okay, right, I want that water tank that costs that much amount of money, or I need, I don't know, I want to buy more land, or what would be the next steps
right
here?
So there's an agreed upon budget, which is on a per acre basis. It's usually to expand current production. So if I'm planting on 5 acres, you know, what's it going to take to get to 10? And the funding is directly linked to cost per acre of production. So we have, like I said, budgets set out. So it's not so much the farmer telling us how much they need, but us sharing a budget and adjusting it based on the farmer's reality on the ground. Sometimes labor costs a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less, but we know roughly the price of water tanks, right? So it's mainly like that. And when the farmer, another way of reducing risk is actually not dispersing these funds all to the farmer at once, but also agreeing with them in terms of a timeline for the project. So we have an idea of budget, but we also have a good idea of the phasing of production and when to expect, you know, our first harvest and so on. And so we can set goals together with the farmer to decide on when they need specific payouts, you know, and so it's all about hitting those agreed upon targets that will kind of unlock these payments.
Okay, so when I understand it correctly, it's basically I'm building my credit score, and based on that, I qualify for X amount of budget or X amount of funding per acre or other metrics that are finally relevant. Okay. And how are you kind of mentioned it right now. So formulate that. So the terms of paying back the loan or the funding, they are standardized, or are they always on an individual basis, or how does that work?
They're standardized, but because we're a startup, there is some wiggle room or room for negotiation. So we make a strong suggestion in terms of where these numbers should be. For farm funders, the returns are between 15 and 20% after a year. Farm Credibly is also involved as an investor in a sense in this farm, because we're investing time and money and expertise in helping with the farm management, and also ensuring that this repayment happens. So we also get a percentage, usually between 10 and 15%, and the farmer keeps the rest. So it's about a three-way agreement where we help to manage and monitor the farm activity, and also ensure that the goods hit the market. So it might be going to an agro-processor here, or going to the export market, right? Both actually have different price points and different payouts for the farmer. So we just try to facilitate the whole process, and we charge a commission for that.
Okay. And how would it look from the other side, where the money is coming from investors? Are these usually individuals? Are we talking about banks here? And if I would say, all right, I have $10,000 or X amount of money, and I think an investment in agriculture in Jamaica is a good thing, is a nice return, or alternative investment to diversify my portfolio, would that work? And if so, how would be the
it's funny that you said the price point of 10,000. So we're actually, the costing is roughly 10,000 US per acre. And right now, where we're getting the most traction is with individuals. So we started out aiming at banks. We realized banks are so risk adverse that they are not the right target for this. Banks lend less than 2% of their portfolios in agriculture, and that's typically not even in to farmers directly. So but agriculture contributes to over 7% of GDP, and even more if you include the manufacturing it contributes to. So it's really lopsided when you look at banks. And so we've really diverted our attention from that, and we're looking actually at the Jamaican and Caribbean diaspora. So we have communities in Canada, the US, and the UK, where we are seeing a lot of interested individuals. And we're actually currently piloting something where we are making it easier for people to invest in groups and to share these opportunities among their own friend networks. So we see that as an easier way to for people to get on board as investors.
Because just to make sure I understood you right, so because you have that 10,000 threshold for an initial investment, or
that's right. Yeah, the price point is actually typically outside of what people in the diaspora feel comfortable with, given the proposal. So we're saying, hey, if you get 10 people together, a $1,000 commitment is a much easier sell.
And how would the legal stuff, or maybe the blockchain comes into place? How does that work out? Let's say I have the 10,000, or I represent a investor group, whatever. Do I getting equity as part of do I own part of the land or part of the whole operation, or is it a complete loan, or is it that you as Farm Credibly guarantee my repayment? How is it stored on a blockchain? A lot of questions, but maybe you can clear.
Sure, I can understand that. So I mean, actually with blockchain, this is usually kind of working very much behind the scenes, and is invisible in a sense to both investors or what I should actually say is financiers and farmers, right? They don't care so much about the technology, but since you do, I'm happy to go into more detail. The tokenization of what we're talking about in terms of what people get is actually into the production. So you essentially, we are tokenizing the production on the farm. The truth is, it doesn't make sense to try to own a piece of the land necessarily. Sometimes the farmers don't even own it, right? They're leasing land. So what we're actually saying is, hey, you are essentially financing this production of pepper at, let's say, $40 per kilo.
Mm-hmm.
And when it hits the market, that same token or that same $40 per kilo is now worth, $100 per kilo.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get a payout from that. So it's tracked in this way. We're actually doing a lot of our process right now manually, mm-hmm. and together with working with a model farm, because we are ironing out a lot of the details, and it's actually quite expensive to develop directly on the blockchain or deploy things. And like you said earlier, this thing will really grow with a network effect, and we're really not there yet. So we don't want to be premature in our deployment, but what we are instead doing is getting our hands very dirty with smart contracts, and we have some really interesting stuff in kind of the R&D side of the company where that's concerned. But I won't really speak about that yet. So to answer your question, what people get is a digital receipt to show that they own a piece of production, is essentially not a piece of land, not a piece of not equity in the farmer's business, but actually this commodity as it moves along the supply chain increases in value.
That's what I was thinking. So you basically kind of tokenize the supply chain or part of it, and that's okay. So how would because you mentioned that it's still a lot of manual processes involved, how would it work now, and what is your vision? Do I have to have a Coinbase account with some Ether or Bitcoin in it, or can I just use my credit card, or do I have to use another third party?
Right. So right now, like I said, things are manual, and we're also exclusively using the traditional financial systems that exist. So people make payments, yes, with their credit card or with wire transfer, and it goes through the formal banking sector. I would say this is a clear and very easy fit to actually use digital currencies, also because we're talking about, I'm moving away from using language like lending or loans, but financing these farms, even in terms of their farm inputs, which is a clear part of this. It's much easier if they can just walk into these farm stores and walk out without the exchange of physical currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
It also also stops the event where the farmer is given physical currency, but some event happens, some school fees have to be paid today, or something else happens and the money gets diverted. So there are clear benefits to using digital currency, but that's not a reality in Jamaica yet. And there are also several questions around how some of these things will be regulated. So you mentioned Coinbase, etc. So for those reasons, and because there's so many other things to try to solve, we're not yet facilitating actual cryptos on our network or anything like that. That can likely change in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to that. And like I said, we're experimenting with some really cool stuff right now. But in terms of what we're offering formally as a product, it's using, the traditional financial systems that exist.
Would be the dream state when we fast forward, I don't know, 5 years, 1 year, 10 years, you pick the time frame. What would be your ideal scenario?
So, I would like for us to have built up a healthy enough network and ecosystem to facilitate digital lending, as well as repayments, all all wirelessly, all through these tools we already have in our hands, cell phones, and have an impact on numerous farmers across Jamaica. But of course, in 5 years' time, the goal here is to also expand to other economies who are faced with similar challenges, which are actually quite large. So I think within the Caribbean is one way to look at it. But if you look at the wider developing world, countries in Africa where we have also had the opportunity to present have been extremely receptive to this, because the problem at its heart is a global one around access to finance in agriculture. So we would like to build these tools and technology to a state where it's working and working well in Jamaica, but we'd like to then apply these in other contexts. But it does involve a lot of work on the ground. It means onboarding not just farmers, but businesses to participate, to vouch for these farmers, and financiers who are interested in financing these farms. So there's a lot of work kind of necessary, but we definitely want to rise to the occasion and see this being extremely impactful in 5-10 years.
I think so too. I totally agree with your statement that one of the main bottlenecks is the not existing or limited existing access to financing. So what would you see as the biggest bottleneck for you right now? Is it to onboard more farmers? Is it the tech side of things? Is it to get more investors that putting money or financing projects?
So if I'm to single it out to one thing, it would be the third thing you mentioned, finding more financiers who want to finance this, because that's the source of the funding at the end of the day. Farmers, like I said, we have little problem with traction or getting interest in participating in our platform. And then the next layer to this is to get more businesses in the farmers' ecosystem to also participate. But to single it out to one thing, it would be about getting more financiers on board. And so that's where a lot of our R&D energy is going, and we're really focusing on what our customer looks like and what their needs are as well, right? What's important to them, what's important to communicate to them as a part of this process, right? There's a 1-year wait before you start getting back your money, and so what's important for these people who have options, right, and alternative places to put their funds. So we're learning a lot in this process.
What is your experience? What is the biggest motivation for people right now to invest in these kind of projects?
So it's mainly about the impact. It's about people who are either conscious about our food supply systems and want to do something different, or want to interact in a different way with our food supply systems. And secondly, with the diaspora, people have maybe even a small level of guilt having left the island and being in a situation where they're able to earn more, but lack a convenient way to kind of give back to either their communities or even their families. Sometimes, we hear a lot of kind of horror stories of people who think their money is going to a specific initiative or family member and or purpose, and things don't work out that way, right? This may be going to individuals, but even government initiatives in the past have suffered from what I started out by describing, right, which is this lack of trust and lack of credibility. So that's what we are really working hard to do differently, and what I think will drive this product into the future.
So one concern that I would have right now as an investor would be the currency or the settlement, rather, meaning I come from the UK or I come from Europe or Canada and I invest in British pound or Canadian dollar. And then 1 year from now, I get a payout in Jamaican dollar, which is then 5%, 10%, 20% fallen or has fallen in value. Is that a concern? Do you hedge that in some way, or is it completely irrelevant? What can you say about that?
No, it's not irrelevant at all. It is a good point that you raise, and I think it is a challenge because we have to work in Jamaican dollars. Our farm costs and inputs and budgets, everything is calculated in Jamaican dollars. But you're absolutely right. If the dollar itself devalues during the year and the process, it actually can have a negative impact on financiers who operate in a different currency that probably didn't devalue. So it is something we're working through. It is also another justification to have to use a digital currency that's not as not decreasing in value the way the Jamaican dollar is. And it's an improvement we plan to roll out, but it's a limitation we haven't been able to avoid for our current iteration. And I think that's fine because we're still in a mode where we're starting small. We're working with our model farm. We're identifying, individuals who are interested in participating this way and have some level of understanding of the situation. So that's probably why we've seen more traction with Jamaicans in the diaspora than, maybe individuals in Germany. But it's something we're very aware of, and we are currently, working on addressing that using technology and using an intermediary store of this value or this financing, so that it doesn't all end up in Jamaican dollars. And like I say, we pay in disbursements in a phased manner. So not everything is necessarily getting to the farmer at the same time. So, yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about on the currently minted digital or central bank digital currency of the Bank of Jamaica?
I mean,
a little off topic, but maybe some connections here.
Sure. No, there are definitely connections. I mean, I would say I'm pretty okay. Overall, I'm supportive and excited that this exists. As an entrepreneur and someone who works in the space, I'm also critical, if you'll allow me to be, and a little disappointed even. Okay.
I think we'll be sharing some opinions here, but yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, it's not based on blockchain technology. That's the biggest red flag and problem for me. I think if you're making a decision in this time as a central bank, given the global space and context, it really blows my mind why you would not want to develop expertise in this area or launch something using this technology. So that's a huge red flag and problem. But the bigger problem is actually around adoption and the way that this is being rolled out. So it's very similar and in line with how financial institutions think here, but it's very much like a closed. They're barriers to entry. They're extreme barriers to entry for even a small company like myself or anyone else, and that's not going to work in Jamaica's favor. I mean, what the financial sector suffers from is being extremely exclusive and excluding large percentages of the population, and nothing in this digital currency being issued by the Bank of Jamaica is moving away from that. It's very much continuing to operate in the same way. And with my experience, etc., and being a technologist or a developer myself, I'm not excited about the technical aspect of this. This, from a technical standpoint, has been possible for a long time. In fact, there are several startups and friends of mine who have created systems that can do the same or even better. And these things were really turned down and not given any support. And so on a technical level, yeah, I haven't seen anything that will necessarily impress me, or anything so impressive. And I wait to see and hope that they can be successful in rolling it out. But I'm fearful that if there's not a big initiative to include the entirety of the population, that it will be, a failure, much like mobile money has been, and several other, initiatives that have followed a similar process of rollout and being really cagey. But I mean, to better maybe contextualize this, Jamaica is between a hard and a rock place. Between a rock and a hard place, in the sense that we are flagged as a territory with a lot of potential money laundering, etc. And so there is, in fact, regulation that's beyond the shores of Jamaica that means that, our hands are tied here. So I'm not really putting the blame on our local institutions entirely. I think there's a bigger, but I think we can be more. I think we should be more adventurous, because the risk is that, is that we'll kind of miss the boat, in the sense that this is a global shift, and we can. I think we should help to lead the charge instead of just picking up whatever crumbs there are.
Yeah, I think I agree here that it is or was a kind of lost opportunity, or rather, I'm a big proponent of decentralizing power, money, finance, however you want to call it, and which is one of the principles of blockchain or cryptocurrencies in that regard. And the central bank digital currency is pretty much the opposite. So I see a lot of the disadvantages with not so much of the advantages or benefits of that solution. But we will see. One last thing, and then maybe a crazy idea, or you will call me borderline insane when I talk about that. But
okay,
in my naive worldview, what about the cannabis market? I see the world opening up for that. I see the US, I see countries in Europe, I see South American countries, Mexico legalizing, and so on. And Jamaica has some history there. Has now also, I think, 2015 kind of legalized it, provides licenses. So is it in the realm of possibility to say, in a few years down the line, I have not only the option to invest in a Scotch bonnet pepper farm, but also a cannabis farm in a legal, risk-free way, without being with one half in prison or something? Or is that, as you said, there are a lot of international regulations, money laundering, and banks and so on. So is that anything that could be a reality in a few years, or is it still far down the line?
So I certainly hope that it can be a reality in a few years. I think we're well positioned to make a lot of impact in this sector, but it is, you're right, it is a few years down the road. And similar to what we were saying earlier, there's the potential for a missed opportunity here from the standpoint of Jamaica. So we have like an international brand, without any formal marketing around this commodity, that is actually like a new industry that's being born within our lifetimes, in a sense, right? Yeah. And that's not something that happens every day. Unfortunately, like, our job, as I said, is in reducing risk. And right now, I can't in good conscience ask anyone to finance a cannabis farm in Jamaica. Since 2015, when the legislation changed, I think most people who invested in the industry are yet to see any returns. And so that's not something we want to offer to our customers right now. but hopefully things will change, and things are continuing to change and move. And I think, again, as international regulation changes, Jamaica can be better and better positioned to really do a lot in the space. I think we have a real competitive advantage in this area, and we need to look at that and think about that, especially when it comes to agriculture or products in general, because we're not just talking about about the raw product, but also the value added side of it. And we have to think within the global context and understand where our competitive advantages are. So I think we have one for Scotch bonnet. Like, the most productive island or country in the region is actually the Dominican Republic. Mm-hmm. And they produce things much cheaply and at much bigger scale than anything that's possible in Jamaica. But the reason we were able to decide on Scotch bonnet pepper as being special is that we understand that there is a difference in the taste or the flavor profile. So there's still something that means that what we produce here in Jamaica is special, or can capture a certain segment of the market, or it's
unique. Yeah.
There's something unique about it. So we have to always remember that. And even when you talk about cannabis, we have to know that there are countries with much larger land masses, with much better capacity to also produce this. And typically, in all of these supply chains, the producer of the raw material has very small margins, and it's a race to the bottom, basically. So we have to decide how we want to participate in this and position ourselves. But I think you're onto something there, Simon. I think it's a bit of a crazy question to ask maybe today, but hopefully not in a few years.
That's why I said maybe a little crazy, but we will see.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, or where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and your project?
Yeah, thanks so much for this opportunity. So I'd say people can definitely find us at farmcredibly.com. For simple questions, please just reach out. There's a contact us form. We're also on social media, on Instagram and on Twitter at Farm Credibly. So reach out through any one of these channels. If you're interested in financing a farm, again, get in touch and let's help make that a reality.
Thank you for listening. I hope to see you next time.